Hey coders, welcome back. This one is called SnowStamper. So if you want to rename it, go ahead and change the title up there. I think you'll find this one to be pretty easy. Basically what we want to do is fill the screen or fill the stage up full of snowflakes. So it's like a gentle snow falling simulation. And we're going to be doing loops, and we're going to be using the pen tool, kind of introducing the stamp function on the pen tool. First thing we want to do is get rid of this cat. We don't need him. Come to choose a backdrop. Oh no, we don't want to choose a backdrop. We want to click on the backdrop and then come to the backdrop tab. Convert that to a bitmap and then fill it full of the color black. Now you may have to adjust your sliders here to get to black, but you want a solid black background for this one. Come back to code and let's choose a sprite. So click on the choose a sprite button. There's a nice one here called snowflake, so bring that one in. Basically we're going to have this sprite start at the top of the screen, fall down slowly. When it gets to the bottom, and it's going to look like it stayed there on the ground while a new snowflake will fall. We're going to implement an if-then statement to a conditional on this one. Let's do an event. We want this to start when the green flag is clicked. And basically we're just going to have the snowflake start at the top and then move slowly down. So let's start with motion. We need to pick where it goes. We want it to start at the top, which is a big Y value, like say 140. And let's go ahead and start at exit 0. So when you restart it, it'll put it right there. We can raise that 140 up a little higher, make it 160. That's a good number. Let's now, what we want it to do is a control thing. So we're going to repeat forever. That's this one. So drag that over. And basically we want to change the Y value by a negative number, so it gets smaller and smaller and smaller as the loop goes on. So we can leave that at negative 10, and you'll see that's all the program does. You can hit the green flag again. That's all the program does. Okay, so we're off to a good start. What we want to happen though is when it gets to the bottom, we want it to start back up at the top. There's different ways to do that. The easiest way is to sense to see if it's touching the edge, but that actually eliminates some of the space we could put the sprite in around the top and the sides, because it counts those as edges as well. So let's do a control statement. Bring this one over here that says if then, and let's just check on where the snowflake is on the screen. So drag this one over here. We want it to reset if it's less than, drag this one over first. This is something is less than 50. You can see right now it's at negative 264. That's a pretty good number. So let's set that to negative 260. If the Y value is less than negative 260, that means that it's way down here, off toward the bottom of the stage. But what are we going to put in here? Well, the program knows where that sprite is. So it's under motion. There's actually a variable here called Y position. We're going to drag that over. So if the Y position is less than negative 260, then we want something to happen. Okay. What do we want to happen though is for it to start back at the top. So we can bring this one back over, go to x0 and positive 160. And if you run this program, it'll go down and then start over, down, start over. We're off to a good start. But what I want to do now is, instead of just starting over, we want it to imprint an image on the bottom of the screen. So it'll look like the snow gets higher and higher and higher. I've got the pen extension already here. If you don't have that on your screen, click on here and then the pen tool. And in the pen tool, there's only two of these we're going to use today. We're going to use this one that says erase all, and we're going to use this one that says stamp. You can click the stamp tool and kind of see what that does. Basically, it prints a copy of the sprite onto the stage. It's important to recognize though that it's not actually making a copy of the sprite, okay? Because there's not a sprite here. It just looks like it. So it's like making a photocopy or sticking a rubber stamp in ink and then stamping it on the stage. Okay, if you click this erase all button, that clears the stage. So stamp, makes a copy, erase all, gets rid of the copies. I will warn you, with the stamp tool, you want to be careful with mixing stamps and sprites, because you might think of some real creative ways to hook those two together. But what I've found is the sprites are always on top. And so if you're trying to use the stamp tool to draw something on top of a sprite, that's not going to work well for you. Let's drag this erase all one over here under the green flag, because every time the program starts over, we want it to erase. When I hit the green flag, we want it to erase the stage. That's what that'll do. And then what we want to do is with the stamp tools, we want it to be at the bottom of the screen. We want it to stamp the image there. So that'll happen one time, starts over. Oh, did you see what happened there? I put them in the wrong order. It stamped after it started back over. You want to change the order of those so the stamping happens when it gets to the bottom of the screen. Now that's not super helpful because what we want to happen is the snow to stack on top of each other. So we're going to do an if statement in here with this one. So if the position is down at the bottom, we want it to stamp and reset. But we also want it to stamp and reset if it's touching another snowflake. So for this one, we are going to use the sensing tool. And we're going to do this if touching color function right here. Click on the gray, and we want to click on this ink eyedropper to suck up some color here. Come over here and choose one of these blue colors right in the middle of the snowflake. So this gray on mine, yours might be a different color, but it switched to the blue that this snowflake is made out of. And so basically what we're going to do is if it touches blue, then we want to stamp and then start over again. I'm just going to right click on these two blocks of code and copy them down here. And so now, did you see what happened? As soon as it touched the stamp that was already there, it stamped again. I think we're at the point now where we want smaller snowflakes. So you can switch yours. I'm going to change mine to 30 right now and try it again. You'll get a better sense of what's happening. Oh no, you won't get a better sense of what's happening because the Y value here it actually needs to match the size of the sprite here. 260 made sense when it was a huge sprite because the value here is the center of the sprite. And so for that huge sprite, 260 was when the sprite knew it was down at the bottom here. For us, we're going to want to make that less than 190. Let's say that. Let's try it again. Now it's resetting. Okay, let's look at our code and make sure you understand what's happening. It's doing this forever loop. It changes Y by 10. Phone rang, so I had to pause the video. Okay, so what I want you to notice here is we have a little bit of redundancy here. Do you notice this go to 0, 160, go to 0, 160, go to 0, 160? Anytime you're using the same block of code over and over and over again, you might think about doing that as a separate function. Now we're not going to get into in this episode this thing called myblocks because you could make one that would be a really quick one to do that. We don't need speed for this. We're just going to do it as a broadcast to itself. So come to events and we're going to create one here that says broadcast message. So instead of going to 0, 160, going to 0, 160, going to 0, 160 each time, we're going to broadcast a message here that says start at top. It's important to name your message something useful to you. And start at the top, we're going to have contain this code. Nope, not that. We're going to put that here. We're going to take that block out. We're going to take this block out and broadcast start at the top, broadcast start at the top. Now you might think, what's the big deal? Because I'm replacing 3 blocks of code here with 3 blocks of code here, and that didn't really save us any time. Well, look at what happens here. Let's bring this over here. When I receive message 1, change that to start at the top. What if you wanted to change this number? Instead of starting at 0, you wanted to start at 100. If you decided to change part of that code without doing it as this broadcast function all over here by itself, you would have to change it 3 times. And if you're writing a big program, it may be hard to keep track of all the places you need to change something. And so if you're repeating the same code a lot, and you can put it as its own loop over here, that can always be a good idea. With that in place, I want to change the way this snowflake appears at the top of the screen. I don't want it to be at 0. I don't want it to be at 100. I want it to be anywhere along the top here. So anywhere from negative 240 all the way over to 240 basically. So can you think about how we would make that be a random thing for the x value? Come to operators, drag this one over, pick random, change that to negative 240 to positive 240. So now, at the beginning of the program, it's going to run this to pick its starting location. If it gets to the bottom of the screen, it'll run that again. And if it touches a colored snowflake that's been stamped to the background, then it'll run it again. Okay, did you see how that's working now? The snow is going to just build up and fall as it touches the other snowflakes that are already on the screen. You can change that too if you say you want it to, well, we'll just leave it at that. Okay, here's the next thing to make your thing look a little bit more cute. Maybe don't have it fall so fast, because changing 10 spaces every time makes it go by pretty quickly. So I'm going to change that to negative 4 instead of negative 10. Come into motion, and let's just put a little bit of a turn on here too. Turn, say, 3 degrees. In with our forever loop. So now when we run it, it turns and it falls slowly. So this is a simple little program where you can use the stamp tool and loops. We've included a little function here so you can change the code that happens over and over again without having to change it in multiple places. Challenge for you would be to maybe have the snowflake turn different directions or different amounts each time it goes. So sometimes it's turning slowly, sometimes it's turning quickly. I'll give you a hint on that one. If you're going to do that, you're going to create a variable here that keeps track of the turning amount. And then each time it resets, you would change that variable. So see if you're able to do that, and hopefully this was a fun one for you. Thank you.